This is a very different kind of Vauxhall Insignia. In second generation form, hatch versions of this car gain Grand Sport billing, but more importantly they also get a much more upmarket demeanour with greater class, refinement and sophistication. Handling's more agile too, thanks in large part to the considerable weight reductions this Mark II model can offer, savings made all the more impressive bearing in mind how much bigger this car is than its predecessor. Add in extremely competitive pricing, and there are all the ingredients for a rejuvenated product.
Think of a staple set of wheels for middle management buyers and you tend to think of a Vauxhall. Now for older folk, Cavaliers and Vectras will come to mind, but more recently the brand has campaigned in this part of the market with its Insignia model. Now originally this was a somewhat forgettable class contender. In second generation form though, it isn't anymore. Welcome to the Insignia Grand Sport. So to understand this car, you really need to understand its market, what the industry calls the D segment, which since the turn of the century has split itself into two sections. Now on one side you've got the volume contenders, so cars like Ford's Mondeo, Volkswagen's Passat and Skoda's Superb, all of them traditionally representing Vauxhall's main opposition. And on the other there are the premium models, so cars like the BMW 3 Series, Audi's A4 and the Mercedes C-Class. Now freshly launched volume models always have premium aspirations and they almost never fulfill them. So, will the Insignia Grand Sport, launched in the spring of 2017, be an exception to that rule? Certainly has an interesting argument to put forward for any open-minded private buyers and fleet managers prepared to listen. It's priced from the kind of money you could easily pay for a Focus-sized family hatch, but it's sized not against the 3 Series or a Mondeo, but up at the level of a full executive sector model. So in other words, something as big as a BMW 5 Series or a Mercedes E-Class. Now Vauxhall claims that the cabin quality and the technology on offer here is of that standard too. Now this is, in short, a massive step forward for the Griffon brand in this part of the market. Of course, it'll need to be to interest folk in this sector who'd normally never be seen dead in anything without an upmarket badge, which is why an enormous investment has been poured into making this second generation Insignia almost unrecognisably better than its predecessor. Think of, well, virtually any feature you might want in a premium model, and the chances are this Vauxhall will offer it with classy packaging and at a vast list price saving. Already, sales-wise, the old Insignia was the only D-segment volume model that was able to trouble the German prestige brands. This one, we think, will give them even more to think about. Let's find out why. So, you get in. What to expect? Well, the Grand Sport name sounds quite promising, and more importantly, so does the fact that this second generation Insignia is 175 kilos lighter than its predecessor. Press the starter button, and the good news continues. Now this is a diesel variant, but it lacks the tractor-like rumble that previous Insignia CDTI models used to have. Plus, this Mark II model's got a longer wheelbase and a wider track, and those are both things that ought to make this Vauxhall feel more solid and stable. Time to try it. Cars like this don't spend their lives on open country roads, but on endless motorway trips and snarled up suburban crawls. Dynamically, they should be designed to suit that remit in the way that this one really is. Now, to some extent, it feels like the bigger car it's now become, the suspension floating you over broken surfaces that would have troubled and impeded the previous model. As before, there's the option to further improve it with a FlexRide adaptive damping system that automatically adapts the car's damping to suit road conditions, cornering speed, vehicle movements and an individual's driving style. For comfort-orientated motoring, it allows you to switch to a tour setting, while if you are pressing on, you can select Sport. Now, we don't have that system fitted here, and we haven't really missed its absence quite as much as perhaps we would have done with the previous generation model. The underlying firmness that you got at urban speeds in the first generation Insignia is missing here. While out on the open road when cornering at speed, there's less body roll than there was before, and generally there's a much higher level of agility. Taking the weight of a typical small family out of any car will do that for you. Having said all of that, the sport element of this Vauxhall's title shouldn't be taken too literally. It's not in any sense a car that you'd take out to drive just for the fun of it, but it's one you'd be very happy to have chosen at the end of a long day fighting against the clock to meet appointments with awkward clients who just don't care about the difficulties of grappling with Britain's congested highway network. For that kind of use, it's pretty certain that you're going to want a diesel engine. The tide of public opinion may be turning against black pump fueled power plants, but the company buyers who account for the overwhelming majority of Insignia sales are still very much wedded to them. So that's what we've chosen to try here. The 1.6 litre and 2 litre power plants that are on offer now bear Turbo D badging, but otherwise they're fundamentally the same as their counterparts in the previous generation model. That being the case, our consumer advice remains pretty much the same. Choose the pokier version of the 1.6, and it is that 136 PS variant we're trying here, a model capable of reaching 62 miles an hour in 9.9 seconds en route to 131 mph. That is a second and 4 miles an hour quicker than the 110 PS version of the same model. That's about 10% cleaner and more frugal, but doesn't have quite the same punch through the gears. A 2 litre Turbo D Insignia is a lot harder to recommend on account of efficiency figures that have, well, slipped away from the class standard. Although with 400 Newton meters of torque on tap, the extra 80 Newton meters of pulling power that the 170 PS version of this engine offers over the top 1.6 litre model could be useful for towers and very welcome for those whose lot in life is continued long distance travel. 62 miles an hour from rest in that variant occupies 8.2 seconds on the way to 140 miles an hour, and if you want to improve on those figures, bi-turbo 210 PS version of that engine is also on offer. That top variant only comes with the all-new 8-speed automatic gearbox, and that has been freshly developed for this second generation Insignia, and it's an option with all the engines except the 1.6 litre diesels. If you do want automatic transmission with one of those units, then you have to have the old 6-speed auto box that's been carried over from the previous generation. Should you consider petrol power? Well, the development team behind this car evidently think that an increasing number of potential buyers will, because they have put a lot of work into making this part of the lineup more credible. Small capacity turbocharged engines that use unleaded are very much in vogue at present, even in the D segment. Ford, for example, uses a 3-cylinder 1 litre unit in base versions of the Mondeo. Vauxhall hasn't gone quite that far here, but the General Motors engineers have delivered a completely new entry-level 1.5 litre power plant that certainly punches above its weight. It's offered with either 140 or 165 PS. The former unit's capable of rest to 62 in 9.3 seconds en route to 130 miles an hour, and the pokier counterpart is capable of improving those figures to 8.4 seconds and 138 mph. Since the quicker car offers no significant penalty in terms of either purchase price or running cost efficiency, the choice between the two variants is a fairly easy one for enlightened Insignia buyers who realise that their relatively restrictive annual mileage doesn't really justify the price premium for diesel power. That only leaves the top 2 litre petrol engine, another completely redesigned powertrain, and one that Vauxhall's keen to talk about, despite the fact that sales of this variant will be vanishingly small. And that's because this 260 PS flagship turbo model showcases both of what are arguably the two most significant engineering developments that have been introduced into this second generation Insignia. One's the super slick 8-speed gearbox I was mentioning earlier, and the other is a sophisticated new intelligent all-wheel drive system. That's also used on the top bi-turbo diesel model, and it uses a state-of-the-art rear torque vectoring system. Now here, a clever twin clutch setup, the so-called twinster diff, can apply torque to one or both of the rear wheels independently. Now when you're cornering at speed, more torque is sent to the outside rear wheel, improving traction and ensuring that there's much more of a feeling of precision when you turn in. Now that is ideal if, for example, one of your wheels happens to be slightly off the ground, as might be the case if you were taking a fast, bumpy turn at speed. The Flex Ride adaptive damping system we mentioned earlier is standard on that top 2-litre petrol model, and when it's set to Tour, it accentuates the benefits of a multi-link rear suspension design that's unique to that top model. At the other extreme, with everything set to Sport, this setup promises to make this particular Insignia a very rewarding car to drive indeed, and it's certainly quick enough to match the premium German rivals. 62 miles an hour from rest takes 6.9 seconds en route to a top speed that has to be artificially limited at 155 miles an hour. That's obviously a nice turn of pace to have, but it isn't really relevant for typical buyers of this model. So I'll finish by summarising the key things that you need to know. Now, this Insignia easily matches class-leading Passat and Mondeo models in terms of drive dynamics, and more importantly for likely customers, it's arguably even more refined at cruising speeds than either of those two rivals. Plus, features like the optional Intellilux matrix headlamps and a range of camera-driven safety systems means that there's pretty much all the sophistication you'd get from a German premium brand model in this segment too. As a result, you'd not only like one of these, but you might even conceivably want one. And for Vauxhall, in this part of the segment, that has to represent a big step forward. You might not previously have perceived the idea of running a large Vauxhall as being in any way aspirational. Well, perhaps you need to think again. Now, this one might still campaign in much the same market segment as its predecessor, but it has moved up a class in almost any way you care to name, most particularly in style and size. Now, the style element comes from elegant shaping that was originally showcased by this company's Monza concept car, first exhibited at Frankfurt back in 2013. As for size, well, the Griffin brand has in every way pushed the limits of what constitutes a D-sector model, in much the same way as Skoda does with its Superb. As a result, the dimensions of this car are more Mercedes E-Class than C-Class, more 5 Series than 3 Series. But can this Insignia Grand Sport really match the kind of driveway statement that rivals like those are able to make? Well, it'll certainly be interesting to see how buyers react to this model line's completely fresh look. A confident demeanour that starts here at the front with a long, graceful bonnet that sweeps down into an upright and slightly inverted grille, featuring these smart chromed wing sections. Now, they flow from this central Griffin badge out towards slim headlights that feature an LED version of the wing signature styling graphic that first debuted on the original Insignia. These lamps can optionally be ordered in this sophisticated Intellilux form, and in this guise they feature 32 segments that work over a 400-metre range with an exceptionally bright and constantly adapting beam that never dazzles other road users. In profile, you better appreciate the changes made to the size of this car. A 55mm increase in length that's enough to take this Vauxhall from being one of the smaller offerings in the D segment to being the very largest car of this kind you can now choose. And one of the more stylish ones too. Now, the original Insignia was one of the first cars in this segment to pioneer the coupe-style rear side window line that was subsequently adopted by premium models like the Audi A5 Sportback and the BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe. Now, this one continues with that theme and matches it with a crisp crease flowing back through the door handles, along with what designer Mark Adams calls the sweep spear, this sculptural blade-like lower swage line that starts behind the front wheel arch and then further back flows dramatically up towards the rear door handle. Move to the rear and the emphasis is on simpler shaping and a clean, decluttered look that accentuates the impact of this central chromed Griffin badge, but is slightly spoiled by this ugly rear wiper which sticks out of the boot lid like something from the 70s. Better is this sleek, high-mounted LED brake light that's incorporated into the roofline, and these smart LED rear lamp clusters feature elegant chrome trimming along with the twin-blade styling signature we referred to earlier. So let's take a seat inside, where there is an enormous improvement over what was served up by the previous Insignia. Premium rivals still do have the edge when it comes to cabin ambiance, but the gap has been closed considerably, not only because fit and finish is so much better, but also because the development team have incorporated a few of the design tricks that make top German brand models feel more driver orientated. Now, one instance of that lies in the way that the console between the seats has been raised and the driving position lowered by 3 centimetres, the result being a cockpit orientated feel that makes you feel more part of the car. Another example is found in the way that when you move your gaze from the top of the centre dash area down, you'll find the buttons for the infotainment system, the climate control setup, and those for various customer options displayed in 3 separate zones, which means it's easy to find and operate them without taking your eyes off the road. Specify the optional head-up display we've been trying here, and you don't really need to look at the instrument binnacle either, although that would be a pity because it's actually very smartly configured. Now, provided you have a model fitted up with navigation, the central part of this dial pack will be taken up with a 4.2-inch colour screen that can show 2 selectable layouts. So Sport shows a virtual speedo dial, while Touring delivers a digital MPH readout. Either way, you can tailor the display via info, audio, phone and nav options depending on what you want to see. Now, an even more sophisticated 8-inch display is available as an option. Anything that the instrument binnacle can't tell you will almost certainly be found on this centre dash IntelliLink infotainment monitor. It's a touchscreen that certainly doesn't follow the iPad stuck on the fascia design approach that's currently favoured by some of the premium German brands. No, on the contrary, it's beautifully integrated into the dash, even to the point of incorporating this little ledge along its lower frame so that you've got somewhere to rest your fingers in between stabs at a display that now features pinch and swipe functionality, smartphone style. This monitor will usually be 8 inches in size, although there is also a 7-inch version for those who opt to do without navigation. And as you'd expect, it's compatible with the latest Apple CarPlay and Android Auto phone connectivity systems, activated by this projection screen option. Now, more familiar infotainment inclusions run to the usual Bluetooth, DAB stereo and informational features. Plus, of course, there's sat-nav if you've specified it, although it might be tempting not to pay extra for that, given this setup's capacity for downloading a whole range of different apps, including navigational ones. Having sat-nav, though, will be a major advantage when it comes to using the other key piece of standard technology available with this car, the OnStar Personal Connectivity and Service Assistant. So, what on earth is that? Well, let me show you. You see this blue button above the windscreen by the rearview mirror. Now, let's assume that you want to know something on your journey, say a hotel or a car park, or maybe, for example, the kids are hungry and you're wondering just how far it is to the nearest McDonald's. Now, the answer is just a click away.
Connecting to OnStar.
Hello, can you tell me where the nearest McDonald's is, please? Now, if your Insignia has been fitted with sat-nav, the operator can simply download the details directly onto the screen. It's as simple as that. Now, even if navigation hasn't been specified, the OnStar package remains a strong selling point, especially when it comes to, well, rather more serious journeying issues. So let's say that your daughter's borrowed the car and then she's got a puncture on a desolate, deserted stretch of road. And understandably, she'll be scared and worried, but she doesn't need to be. All she's got to do is push this blue button and the OnStar operator will take over, alerting the rescue services and, if necessary, staying with her until they arrive. To take an even worse scenario, let's say that you've had an accident and you're incapacitated. The OnStar system will have alerted on activation of the airbag, so in seconds, help will be speeding to your exact location. Other functions of the OnStar package include the way it can turn your Insignia into a 4G LTE Wi-Fi hotspot that boosts your phone signal and which can function with up to 7 devices, so there'll be no arguing in the back. Plus, the package includes a vehicle tracking device that can automatically disable the car if someone steals it and then pinpoint its location. Now, should such a theft take place, you simply contact OnStar using a downloadable My Vauxhall smartphone app that, if necessary, you can also use to access important vehicle data or remotely lock or unlock your car. Enough with connectivity. What else do you need to know about this cabin? Well, for one thing, you no longer feel that you're in an Astra with ideas above its station. Now, it is true that quite a lot of the hardware has been carried over from the latest version of that car, but it has been incorporated into a fascia layout that, as we suggested earlier, now feels wholly appropriate to the more exalted D segment. Now, we've talked about the way that the ergonomics help with this, and material quality plays a part here too. Slick stitching distinguishes the grippy 3-spoke leather steering wheel, the top of the soft feel dash, and the door cards that feature classy dark ash style inserts. Plus there's smart piano black trimming on the console between the seats. Getting comfortable is easy, the seat is well proportioned, and if you've got a bad back, you can opt for a specially designed 16-way adjustable alternative with a coveted seal of approval from the AGR, Action for Healthy Backs organisation. Now, that feature alone might sell high mileage motorists into this car. So we'll finish here by covering the cabin storage options, and we're disappointed that the glove box and the door bins are relatively small and there's nowhere to stow your sunglasses. On the plus side though, there's a usefully deep cubby behind the gear stick, while in front of that lever is this smart sliding topped compartment incorporating a small shelf and 2 cup holders. Further back between the seats is an even deeper lidded storage box, inside of which is a useful USB port. So, time to check out another area of this car that might really sell it to you, the back seat. Now, on the previous model, the styling of this coupe-style rear C-pillar meant that you had to dip your head quite a bit if, on entry, you weren't going to bash it on the roof aperture. This time around, although the swept-back roofline remains, the designers have managed to incorporate it in such a way that fewer contortions are required to get in. Once inside, you really notice the benefit of this second generation model's extra 92mm of wheelbase. Now, as you'd expect from a car that's now nearly 5 metres in length, so nearly as long as an enormous Audi Q7 SUV, there's plenty of room for one really tall adult to sit behind another. Now, in this regard, a Vauxhall certainly a match for Skoda's Superb, the D-segment class leader when it comes to cabin space. The Insignia can't match its boxy Czech rival for headroom though. Mind you, it does do pretty well in this regard, given that this second generation model's roof height is 29mm lower than before. Designer Mark Adams is 6'4", and apparently he fits in here quite comfortably. Just as impressive is the cabin width, as you'd expect it would be, given this car is now wider than a supposedly much bigger E-segment model like BMW's 5 Series or Mercedes E-Class. There's 25mm more shoulder room and 32mm more hip room than there was before, which ought to have made it relatively easy for 3 adults to sit comfortably back here. Now, unfortunately, mitigating against that is the height of this centre transmission tunnel and the fact that this rear bench has been sculpted so that any middle occupant has to position themselves on this uncomfortably raised section of foam. If there are only 2 of you though, you'll be able to use this centre armrest with its twin built-in cup holders. Aboard entry-level trim, you get these twin USB sockets. So finally, let's take a look in the boot. Now, a little surprisingly, Vauxhall hasn't followed the current trend towards gesture-controlled powered tailgates, although you can specify such a thing on the Sports Tourer Estate version of this car. And at first, it isn't immediately obvious how you open this rear hatch at all once you're outside the car. There's no visible catch, nor, rather oddly, do you get a button for that purpose on the key fob. Actually, you have to press just below the V on the Vauxhall brand emblem here to reveal, well, a little surprisingly, given all that extra body length, one of the smallest cargo areas in the volume part of the D segment. Now, all that emphasis on extra rear seat space has seen carriage capacity drop by 10 litres over what was provided by the previous generation model, which means that this 490-litre boot is about 10% smaller than that of a Ford Mondeo and about 20% smaller than a rival VW Passat. Vauxhall, rather hopefully, believes that potential buyers won't really notice. the company would probably do better to reference the fact that even 490 litres is more than you get from premium branded models in the segment. So an A4, a C-Class or a 3 Series, for example. And you don't tend to hear buyers of those cars complaining too much about lack of trunk space. Anyway, the Griffin brand points out correctly that the space you do get is now more usable thanks to a squarer opening aperture and a lower loading sill. With the 40-20-40 rear seatback split we've got on this car, it's also possible to accommodate really long items while still retaining backseat space for a couple of passengers. Now, of course, if you were regularly going to need extra carriage space, you'd be more likely to opt for the Sports Tourer Estate version of this car, and that's the body style that offers a standard boot capacity figure of 560 litres. What else? Well, we were surprised that the boot floor flexes so much. It's probably because there's a relatively empty space beneath it, thanks to Vauxhall's refusal to supply this car as standard with a space-saver spare wheel. There's no cargo area 12-volt socket, but you do get the usual hooks and tie-down points, plus there's a useful elasticated strap on the right-hand side here. Dropping the rear bench is relatively easy thanks to these switches on either side of the cargo area sidewalls. That's a process that frees up 1,450 litres of fresh air should you need it. Now with the Sports Tourer Estate, that figure rises to as much as 1,665 litres. Despite the fact that this Insignia has been pushed up market, prices have been kept very competitive, and indeed they've been sharpened so that they more accurately fit the latest BIK benefit in kind categories. In fact, from launch, Vauxhall claimed that some versions of this Mark II model Insignia Grand Sport were up to £1,500 less expensive than their direct first generation predecessors. So to be specific, we're talking about a range priced in the £17,000 to £28,000 bracket. Now those really are very affordable figures for a car of this size. There's a £1,500 model for model premium to pay if you want the extra luggage space of the Sports Tourer Estate variant, and that's the body style that's also available in raised 4x4 country tourer guise if you want an alternative to an SUV. This time around there's no saloon version of the Insignia though. So let's take a look at a few specifics in the model lineup. Automatic transmission is an option across the range for about £1,700, and it's offered with 6 speeds if you've got a 1.6 litre diesel, while the brand's latest 8-speed auto box is available on all the other variants. At the foot of the lineup, most buyers are going to want to pay the premium of about £1,400 that Vauxhall asks to progress from the 1.5 litre turbo petrol units to the 1.6 litre turbo D diesels. Now it's the poker of the two 1.6s that we're trying here. The 136 PS 1.6 turbo D unit that we probably think represents the sweet spot in the range. With plusher trim levels, you can find another £800 to get the 170 PS 2-litre CDTI power plant, but that costs a lot more to run and isn't much faster. Four-wheel drive is limited to the top 210 PS 2-litre bi-turbo diesel and the 260 PS 2-litre turbo petrol model. Both derivatives are only available with auto transmission, and they're models that could easily command a list price tag of around £30,000 if you've added in a few well-chosen extras. Variants like those, though, are exceptional. By and large, the pricing of this Insignia Grand Sport is, as I've already suggested, extraordinarily competitive. And that's something we'll put into perspective by pointing out that one of these is hardly any more expensive than a much smaller Vauxhall Astra fitted out with the same engine. Now, a huge proportion of Insignia Grand Sport models will be sold in the £18,000 to £22,000 bracket. Well, list pricing for key rivals like Ford's Mondeo and Skoda Superb doesn't even start until the £22,000 price point. And the money you'd pay for the ritziest, the most powerful Grand Sport models would only get you the cheapest, feeblest and most basic version of a BMW 3 Series, an Audi A4 or a Mercedes C-Class. Now, Vauxhall also points out that the look and the feel of pricey versions of this car is now closer to that of premium 5-door contenders like Audi's A5 Sportback and BMW's 4 Series Grand Coupe, and there is something in that. And those two models are pitched from about £33,000 upwards. So, you get the idea. Vauxhall's asking figures here are going to leave volume competitors feeling very uncomfortable indeed, never mind premium rivals. So let's get specific. If, like most buyers, you're looking at an entry-level diesel, then list pricing suggests that this Vauxhall would typically save you between £3,000 and £4,000 over a Skoda Superb or a Ford Mondeo, and even more if your point of reference is something like a VW Passat or a Peugeot 508. Japanese rivals do get closer with a comparable Toyota Avensis or a Mazda 6. The difference is more likely to be in the region of around £2,000. In rough terms, though, that is about as close as the competition gets. Even Korean branded contenders like the Hyundai i40 and the Kia Optima, they can't really dip below the £20,000 mark. Wondering how Vauxhall has managed to achieve that? Yes, so will we. Well, you want to know whether corners have been cut when it comes to standard specification. But if they have, the issues aren't too obvious. We're a bit surprised that the entry-level design trim level makes you pay extra basics like parking sensors and driver's seat lumbar support, but otherwise all the key features you'd expect appear to be provided. So you can tick off 17-inch alloy wheels, auto headlamps, keyless entry, and the usual executive niceties like air conditioning, heated mirrors, a leather-trimmed multifunction steering wheel and cruise control with a speed limiter. As for media connectivity, well, as standard, there's an IntelliLink infotainment system that includes a 7-speaker DAB audio setup and smartphone projection via either Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And all of this works via a colour centre dash IntelliLink screen that's 7 inches in size, and as you expect, there's also the convenience of Bluetooth phone connectivity, a USB connector and an aux-in socket. But that is just the start of the media cleverness. Also now standard on every Insignia is the OnStar Personal Connectivity and Service Assistant package. Now, once you've used OnStar, you'll wonder how you ever manage without it. You'll never be stranded after a breakdown or an accident, and almost anything you might ever need to know about any journey you ever take will be just a button press away. The OnStar package also allows you to create in your car a 4G Wi-Fi hotspot, plus there's a smartphone app that can remotely lock or unlock the doors, check your oil life, or if you've lost this Vauxhall in a busy car park, it can sound the horn or flash the lights. Plus, if your Insignia is stolen, OnStar can disable it so it can't be started. In summary, no other rival has a system that can match the range of services that OnStar has to offer. Just bear in mind that there is a cost to use the 4G Wi-Fi after the first 3 months of ownership, and that will vary depending on the service provider you use and the amount of data you want. There's also a cost to continue with the whole OnStar system after year 1, so expect a fee of around £90 a year, excluding Wi-Fi. Is it worth going for a plusher trim level further up the range? Well, possibly. If you want to buy in above the base design trim level, there are 2 ways to go. If you prioritise a sporty look and feel, there are SRI and SRI VX line nav models. If you're more interested in luxury, you should go with either Tech line nav or the Elite nav variants that you'll need to get the most powerful 2-litre engines. Now, you'll have worked out that the nav designation denotes the standard fitment of satellite navigation, a Navi 900 IntelliLink system that comes with a larger 8-inch screen and which can be affordably added into design and SRI models if you want it. Most potential Insignia buyers are probably going to settle on a mid-range model fitted out with either SRI or Tech line trim. Now, in both cases, extra features include twin-spoke 17-inch wheels, dual-zone climate control, auto wipers, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror and twin rear USB sockets. Tech line trim further adds in front and rear parking sensors and tilt and lumbar adjustment for the driver's seat, while also including a 4.2-inch colour information display in the instrument binnacle. Now, alternatively, if the SRI package catches your eye, that'll be because of a more purposeful look, courtesy of dark tinted rear windows, front fog lights and a rear spoiler. Plus, inside with this trim level, you get ambient LED lighting at the front, sports pedals and sports front seats. The driver's one approved by AGR, who campaign for healthier backs. Pricier SRI VX line nav trim adds to this tally with a full VXR body styling pack and a sportier VX line steering wheel. Plus, at this level, that 4.2-inch screen appears in the instrument cluster and you get larger 18-inch wheels, providing you avoid the 1.6-litre diesel engine. Ideally though, most would really want their Insignia kitted out the way this one is, in top elite nav form. Now this is a variant that you have to get the sophisticated IntelliLux LED matrix headlights we've been trying here. Lamps able to constantly adjust their beam for maximum illumination that doesn't dazzle other road users. And other elite features include full leather upholstery that's heated in the front and even in the back too if you go for a 4x4 model or a sports tourer variant. The wheels are either 17, 18 or 20 inches in size depending on the engine you specified. Plus, if you're graduating up from Techline trim, you'll also find the dark tinted windows and front fog lights make an appearance. Enough then on the standard spec. What about options? Well, given the longer distances that most Insignias will travel, you're probably going to want to add in navigation, parking sensors and driver's seat lumbar adjustment if the variant that you're looking at doesn't already have those things. Beyond that, if you've avoided entry-level trim, you'll be offered the chance to upgrade to a couple of key additions to this second generation model, a head-up display and also those IntelliLux LED matrix headlights I just mentioned. Keener drivers will also want to look at the Flex Ride adaptive chassis control system that offers continuous electronic damping control. Other premium features available from mid-range spec upwards include a 6-channel, 7-speaker Bose sound system, and you can now add in the sunroof that, amazingly, previous Insignia models have never been able to offer. On the Sports Tourer estate, that option is replaced by the chance to specify a much larger, full panoramic glass roof. As for other options, well, you might want a rear view camera. Nav-equipped models can be specified with a special 8-inch colour instrument medical display. There's an optional wireless charger tray to more easily top up your mobile phone. And this car has noise-reducing laminated side windows, along with one of the winter packs. These are there to provide heat for the windscreen, for the seats and for the steering wheel. Heat for the front seats also comes included if you or your company can stretch to the optional brownstone Napa premium leather upholstery pack, and that will give you super soft hide for the upholstery and an 18-way power adjustable AGR approved driver's seat with active ventilation and a massage function. Go on, you've earned it. Now, if your interest lies with the more versatile Sports Tourer estate body style, then you could add in a powered tailgate that you can open with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper. Plus, you can also specify a useful flex organiser pack. Now, that will give the cargo area side rails with hooks, a side net pocket and a 3D storage net. So on to aesthetics. Now, as you'd expect, there's a variety of 18 and 20-inch alloy wheels you can upgrade to. Plus, you avoid base trim and the base diesel engine. You can also consider a VXR styling pack that adds a rear spoiler along with sporty bumpers and side sills. Now, we should also mention that unless you want your Insignia to be finished in a solid royal blue colour, you're going to have to pay extra for the paintwork. Now, this car features 2-coat metallic dark moon blue, but buyers could also go for a range of brilliant, pearlescent or tri-coat premium paint finishes. Or there's a Vauxhall exclusive program that can provide just about any colour you want, as well as providing a range of unique exterior and interior decorative features that are designed to make your Insignia feel really quite unique. And talking of interior options, you can add sienna perforated leather inserts into the seats, or you could go for the optional VXR interior pack that'll give the cabin a properly sporty feel. Enough on options, let's look at safety. Now, no car in this class can get by without standard, sophisticated camera-based safety systems these days. And sure enough, all Insignias feature what Vauxhall calls its Driving Assistance Pack 1 package that works via a forward-facing camera mounted behind the rearview mirror. Now, this facilitates the brand's forward collision alert with automatic city emergency braking system. And that's an autonomous braking setup that works at low city speeds of up to 25 miles an hour to scan the road ahead as you drive in search of vehicles that might represent a potential accident hazard. Now, if one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or or perhaps you aren't able to, then the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Now, the same camera also drives two further standard features. Lane departure warning with lane assist will alert you if you're drifting over the lane markings and will also imperceptibly steer you back into position, and a following distance indicator will help you maintain a safe gap to the vehicle in front. Now, if you specify a model with navigation, you also get a traffic sign recognition system that pictures the speed signs as you pass them and then displays them on the dash. As for more common safety stuff, well, the designers have finally got around to equipping the Insignia with a pedestrian-friendly bonnet. And as you'd expect, there are all the usual inclusions, so things like tyre pressure monitoring, ISOFIX child seat fastenings, and twin front, side and curtain airbags, although there's no driver's knee bag. Electronic safety features include an ABS system with brake assist and hydraulic brake assist fade to help in emergency stops, and those are advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard warning lights. There's also hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and the ESP stability control system includes cornering brake control, straight line stability control and a rollover mitigation system. Now, that is a quite comprehensive suite of safety equipment, but if you want to spend more and you've ordered entry-level trim, there are two further options. Go for what Vauxhall calls its Driving Assistance Pack 2, and you get a cruise control system that will use a radar to automatically keep you a safe distance behind the car in front on the highway. If your Insignia has an auto gearbox, then that setup will even bring the car to a stop and then automatically start it off again if you come upon a traffic queue. Even more sophisticated is the Driving Assistance Pack 4 package that the brand makes available on Insignias fitted out with navigation. Now, here a rear cross traffic alert feature warns you of oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a space, and a lane change assist with side blind spot alert feature warns you if on the move you're about to dangerously pull out to overtake in front of another vehicle. Now, also included as part of that pack is a rear view camera and an advanced park assist system that'll help you find a parking space and then automatically steer you into it. The designers really went the extra mile when it came to weight reduction for this second generation Insignia model. This Grand Sport hatch is up to 175 kilos lighter than its predecessor, while with the Sports Tourer estate body style, the difference rises to as much as 200 kilos over the previous generation model. Now, to give you a bit of perspective here, that is a reduction probably somewhere equivalent to the weight saving that you make if you asked your entire family to get out and walk. And it's particularly impressive when you consider this Mark II model is so much larger than its predecessor. In addition, the Smart Shape boasts a particularly sleek 0.26 CD drag factor. From an efficiency point of view, both of these developments were needed to make up for the fact that relatively little is completely beneath the bonnet, at least for diesel buyers anyway. All the black pump engines are carried over from the previous generation model. And that's why this Vauxhall can't emulate its Skoda Superb and Ford Mondeo rivals when it comes to providing an entry-level diesel variant that's able to dip below the 100 grams per kilometre of CO2 barrier. Still, the base 1.6 litre Turbo D model does get relatively close to that target, managing 105 grams per kilometre and 70.6 miles per gallon on the combined cycle. Still, the base 1.6 litre Turbo D model does get relatively close to that target, managing 105 grams per kilometre of CO2 and 70.6 miles per gallon on the combined cycle, which is better than any other contender in the segment can manage. Here we're trying that same 1.6 litre Turbo D engine in its pokey 136 PS guys, in which form the figures are 114 grams per kilometre and 65.7 mpg, and those are readings that you'll hit by about 10% if you specify automatic transmission. Both these two diesel units feature Ecotec badging, which basically means that the models in question come with ultra-low rolling resistance tyres and an adaptive front grille shutter, which reduces drag. All Insignia models feature a stop-start system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, so when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. That isn't enough though to keep the 170 bhp 2-litre turbo D diesel unit competitive, despite its frugal sounding blue injection badging. Now that variant can only manage 54.3 mpg on the combined cycle and 136 grams per kilometre of CO2, which is some way off the standard set by the other 2-litre diesel engines in the segment. We think the 136 PS 1.6 litre turbo D variant that we're trying here is a much better bet. Earlier we mentioned the lack of fresh engine technology for diesel buyers. That's not the case when it comes to the petrol-powered lineup. Here, a new 1.5 litre unit provides a much more credible diesel alternative than the previous Insignia's 1.4 litre powertrain could deliver. In base 140 PS form, it manages 47.6 mpg on the combined cycle and 133 grams per kilometre of CO2. Go for this unit in its pokier 165 PS state of tune, and it doesn't feature the Ecotec efficiency package we were talking about earlier, but that doesn't appear to have a great deal of impact. That derivative returns 47.1 mpg and 136 grams per kilometre of CO2. The only other petrol option is another all-new engine, a 260 PS 2-litre turbo unit that only comes mated to 4-wheel drive and 8-speed automatic transmission. The returns there are 32.8 mpg and 197 grams per kilometre of CO2. On to maintenance issues. All the engines share the same 1 year or 20,000 mile service intervals, and you can download a provided My Vauxhall app onto your smartphone that sets up reminders about servicing and MOTs and will help you find the most convenient garage for your location. Now, if anything does go wrong that's not supposed to, you're covered by a 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty that includes Vauxhall roadside assistance breakdown cover. Now that can be extended by up to 2 years and up to a maximum of 100,000 miles at extra cost. Other financial considerations include how much you'll pay for insurance. Now the Insignia range starts with the Group 14 ranking for every Grand Sport fitted with the 140 PS 1.5 litre turbo petrol engine. If you'd rather have the more powerful 165 PS version of that motor, then you'll be looking at premiums based on Group 16 or 17 ranking, depending on the trim level you choose. The potent 2-litre turbo 4x4 model sits in Group 25. Looking at the diesel options, the 110 PS 1.6 litre turbo D Ecotec variant falls into Group 13 or 14, depending on the trim level, while the 136 PS unit we're trying here ranks at either Group 15 or 16. Anyone looking at the 2-litre turbo diesel will be paying their insurance based on either Group 20 or 21 rankings. Lastly, we come to residual values, which are crucial in a sector which will see over 85% of Grand Sport sales being made to company users. For the 136 bhp 1.6 litre turbo D variant we're driving here, the most popular model, you're looking at being able to retain 35% of its original value after a typical 3-year, 60,000 mile ownership period. That's better than an equivalent Mondeo can manage. So, at least in this respect, the work Vauxhall's put into making this Insignia a more premium product seems to be paying off. The other diesel models hang on to a similar slice of their original cost, while the petrol versions come in at 34% for the 1.5 litre turbos and 32% for the 260 bhp 2 litre 4x4. It's time to change the way you think about Vauxhall's Insignia. This second generation version is one of the most improved cars we've ever tested. And that's thanks to a whole raft of changes that have enhanced everything from styling to technology. In contrast to a previous generation model that inside wasn't much bigger than an Astra, this time around buyers get a spacious cockpit and one of the largest rear cabins in the segment. And that's matched with fit and finish that's a vast improvement over what was served up before. Are there still issues? Yes, a few. Vauxhall thinks that buyers won't notice a reduction in boot space in this Grand Sport hatch model that leaves it some way behind volume rivals in this regard. We disagree. We're also disappointed that the diesel engines in the lineup haven't been further refettled to a point where they can match the efficiency figures of class-leading rivals. And we would have liked to have seen dynamic driving features that benefit all models, not only their flagship 4x4 variants. Having said all that, overall we're extremely impressed by what Vauxhall's delivered here. Now, the Insignia might not be quite good enough to beat the premium German makers at their own game, but it's certainly now the classiest proposition in the volume part of the D segment, which makes it all the more extraordinary that it's just so much more affordable than obvious rivals. Now, Vauxhall proved with the previous generation Insignia that it could make a mediocre model into a bestseller, which means that this time around, well, the Mondeo sector medium range rivals are going to find it very difficult to beat indeed.